Hey, my name is Badass Benny. Welcome to my channel. If you are an ACE, AMAC, or sex human trafficking survivor, you're in the right place. And if you like my videos, like and subscribe and share them nationally and worldwide, please, as sexual assault is international. And I know April will be Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Let's see. We are going to talk about overcoming blocks to recognizing sexual abuse. And I wanted to do a whole video on this. To acknowledge sexual abuse, we may need to challenge specific blocks that have kept us from recognizing it. A number one block could be feeling unsure how to evaluate a particular experience. So we may need to look at an experience in context to determine it was sexual abuse. So for instance, a father may take a bath with his 3-year-old daughter, never once sexually abusing her. But the same series of events could constitute sexual abuse if the father forced the girl to come into the bath with him when she didn't want to. If he purposely hurt her vagina or wouldn't stop touching it, or if he told her not to tell anyone and then rubbed her with the intention of sexually arousing her or got sexually excited himself. Natural human experiences like nudity, touching, kissing, and hugging become abusive when appropriate boundaries are neglected. Let me grab some water. For example, two children playing the familiar game of I show you mine if you show me yours. Adults, we do that too, especially in hookups or if you're alone. It's not abuse as long as neither child feels pressured, tricked, harmed, or betrayed. Block 2. Feeling confused by the special nature of the abuse. One or more of the following circumstances may be hampering your efforts to fully recognize sexual abuse. Sexual abuse was labeled something else. Perpetrators have been known to give their victims amazing rationalizations for their behavior. Quote, I'm teaching you about sex so you'll be a good lover, end of quote. Quote, we were just having fun, end of quote. Quote, you've asked for it because of the way you dressed, end of quote. Some survivors believe these falsehoods and, as a result, have trouble identifying that they were abused. Sexual abuse developed gradually, repeatedly over time. Perpetrators may groom their victims by engaging them over a long period in activities that progress from seemingly innocent to overtly sexual interactions. Tom, a client, told me that when he was young, he and his father would lie together on the couch and watch TV. His father would lie on his back with his legs spread. Tom would lie in the V of his father's legs, resting his head on his father's genitals. After many months of doing this, his father began to get up during commercials and masturbate in the next room, knowing that Tom was sometimes watching. Months later, he raped Tom anally with his finger, and looking back, Tom could see that his father had been preparing him as a sexual partner for years before this sexual contact began. He began to understand that the entire experience had been sexual abuse. Sexual abuse was indirect or secondhand. My client Barbara was sure she had never been a victim of inappropriate sexual contact. But when she took a closer look at her past, in response to her growing anger and fear due to her husband's sexual demands, she recalled that her stepfather's inappropriate sexual behavior had upset her as a child. Some mornings when my sister and I were seated at the kitchen table, My stepfather would come up behind my mother, grab her breasts, and begin fondling them. We'd get upset and want to leave, and Mom would tell him to stop. But he'd keep touching her and make us watch. Even though Barbara was never sexually approached by her stepfather, she suffered the secondhand effects of sexual abuse. She came to associate fear, male dominance, and control with sexual activity. Likewise, in families where children are exposed to degrading pornography, secretive sexual activity, humiliating sexual remarks that can be very vulgar or crass, or other inappropriate behaviors, sexual abuse becomes part of the daily atmosphere, lingering like stale cigarette smoke. Sexual abuse was masked by sex role expectations. When we reverse the sexes of the people involved, we can sometimes see the experience from a new perspective. In therapy, Fred described a sexual experience he had with his babysitter. One night, when I was 7 years old, I went to bed early because I wasn't feeling well. My 15-year-old babysitter got in bed with me and told me I could suck her breasts. She showed me how to put my finger in her vagina, too. I was always thought of this as sexual experimentation. But when I think of a male sitter being sexual with a little girl, I have no trouble defining it as sexual abuse. Block 3, holding on to personal biases. Survivors may have trouble identifying experiences as sexual abuse because of personal beliefs that discount, minimize, or assume responsibility for the abuse. But I didn't resist. When we see that the offender is older, bigger, or more powerful, we may decide our best option for survival is to play possum, play dead. If we have nowhere to run and no one hears our cries for help, we may feel we have no choice but to submit. And sexual abuse sometimes happens so suddenly that there is no time to struggle. But abuse is abuse regardless of whether you didn't fight back. Submission does not mean consent. But I liked it at the time. Sometimes survivors adjust to repeated sexual abuse and even use the experience to obtain attention, affection, and rewards. They may actively cooperate and may even experience emotional or physical pleasure. Sometimes survivors will have an orgasm as they're being raped, and they feel guilty about that they got pleasure from it. So tremendous feelings of shame, guilt, and confusion about sex. Sex is not, rape is not sex. Sex is not rape. But my body responded. Sexual responses are often automatic. We're human beings. A male teenager might see an offender's erection and automatically become aroused himself. Or a girl may suddenly find her nipples harden, who's stroked by the rapist. High stress and anxiety can themselves trigger sexual responses. Abuse is abuse whether or not you responded physiologically. Sometimes in high stress situations, a lot of AMAC survivors, some of our shadow side, our dark shadow side, we all have one. It's about accepting it. And some stem from my AMAC and issues. And I haven't, after my divorce, I started acting out and stuff, and things were happening, and that's a whole another story there. But I realized in my 50s, oh, this is what's going on. I thought I'd dealt with this in my 30s. But it's like a spiral. We have these sexual assault issues, and there's spirals on them, right? And each issue, and sometimes the spiral comes back and we look at it differently if we've done the work, the inner work. And then we all gotta look back at how much work we've done and pat ourselves on the back, or just be good to ourselves, gentle. So let's see. They may actively cooperate and may even experience emotional or physical pleasure. but these creative ways of coping with abuse do not lessen the harm that results. Tremendous feelings of shame, guilt, and confusion about sex. Thank you. But again, the body responds. We read about that. Well, this is what I wanted to say about the high stress. And this, that sometimes survivors will just take off their clothes or masturbate a lot. Like that. And they're like, you know, it could be at an inappropriate time. And they grab their genitals, you know. Let's see. But it was no big deal. Survivors of repeated sexual assaults may over time become desensitized to the experience. Abusive activities, because they are repeated, begin to seem normal. Suzanne, a survivor of repeated childhood molestation, described her reaction after a recent attempted rape. Quote, I went into a parked restroom and a guy grabbed me and started fondling me. I told him my boyfriend was waiting outside, so he let me go. Later, my boyfriend said he was surprised at how I downplayed the experience. I thought, this happens all the time. Later, I realized I had built up such a tolerance to sexual abuse that I couldn't see it when it happened to me. End of quote. Some survivors minimize abuse because it did not involve overt sexual conduct, result in penetration, or culminate in the offender's orgasm. Or culminate, excuse me. However, studies show that attempted intercourse and incompleted rapes can have the same emotional impact on the survivor as a complete assault. A little sexual abuse is still sexual abuse, and everybody deals with it differently. They cope differently. Some people are stuck in the victim stage, and you have to accept that's where it's at. For one example. But my abuse wasn't as bad as other people's. They downplay it. We all have different strengths, tolerant levels, and support systems. A victim of one-time abuse may be just as traumatized as another whose abuse occurred over a long period. If you have been abused, no matter how bad your experience was compared to others, your sexuality has been tainted by the experience. The harm done to you is real and it matters. But it was my fault. Blaming yourself may attempt to gain some sense of control over what happened. Believing you caused the abuse can counter your feelings of powerlessness. If I think I caused it, I could have stopped it. Some survivors may feel they deserve what happened, that it was punishment for being bad or misbehaving. Tragically, the false view that survivors can cause rape continues. In the media, in the courtroom, survivors of rape, particularly female survivors, can be further victimized by suggestions that they asked for it with their appearance or lifestyles. And this is what we have with the Epstein files and the President of the United States and the people who is enabling him. And a lot of them are survivors themselves. That's why I'm doing this channel. Releasing ourselves from these wrong, hurtful messages can help us correctly label experiences as abuse. No gaslighting. No more lying. No more. Regardless of how we look or act, we have a right not to be sexually abused. No one is responsible for the abuse except the offender. Remember my story at a toddler age, baby toddler? You know. So recognizing that an experience was in fact sexual abuse can be difficult. But denying it also makes great mental energy. It takes great mental energy. And when we finally overcome our biases and stop minimizing abuse, we free up our mental energy to be channeled into healing. When you acknowledge sexual abuse, you allow yourself to recognize the catastrophic of sexual abuse as part of your life history. You take back your power and can begin to mend the hurts of the past. Then when you share the experience of your abuse with others, you can do it with your head held high. You are no longer a victim. You are a survivor on your way to becoming a thriver. What are you going to do to take care of yourself today? And remember to drink water,